So today's webinar is called Owners Understanding Your Agency, and I have of course myself on here presenting, and I have my wonderful colleague Sophia Wilson who's going to be co-presenting with me and managing your questions today. Sophia, are you on the line and can you hear me okay?
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me today, Mark.
No problem. Thanks for joining in. Yeah, so let's kind of jump in. There's a few things I want to do as we start talking about the agenda. The first thing I'm going to do is actually I'm going to launch a poll here. I want to get these out of the way pretty early on. So this first poll that I'm going to launch is, what is your role of the agency? And I'm just kind of curious to get an understanding as to what, what everyone's role is. The webinar today is called Owners Understanding Your Agency, but a lot of the times, the people I'm speaking with are I'm helping a lot of people to gain information and reports and knowledge that they then provide to the owner of the agency. And of course, the size of the agency can affect these things. A very, very large agency probably isn't going to have the owner attending this webinar, but we work with a lot of small agencies as well, and might be more owners in that case joining in. So. Looks like we got a bit of a mix with the majority in the owner camp. I'm going to close that poll down. We have 73% voted, but I'm going to close it down so we can move on. So thank you everyone for filling that out. So it looks like we're mostly in the owner space with 22% project managers, 39% owners, 9% creative director, 13% account executive, and 17% accountant. Okay, so we're going to look at the agenda, and then I'm going to launch another poll regarding that agenda and see what people are most interested in. So, for today, really this is about, this webinar is about knowledge. It's about gaining knowledge and understanding of your agency and what's going on. And there's, a few different areas that I'm going to be doing that in and talking about what information is, should be the most important to you and how do you get at that information. So we're going to be taking a look at recommended custom dashboard that I want to show, and the information that exists in that dashboard. We're going to be taking a look at a few other items then. So sales pipeline, so understanding what opportunities are currently in the system and what's the value that could be closed in the future. We're then going to be looking at understanding the current agency workload. So what's our current workload for jobs? How many jobs do we have on the go? What's our staff workload look like, and do we have the opportunity to take on new work? It's almost more like a traffic project management type of project manager type of thing, but more at a high level, from an owner's perspective, just generally, what's going on in the agency. We're then going to take a look at some financial reports, and there's, really one main one in particular that I'm going to spend most of the time on. I'm going to talk about some other ways of pulling custom information as well that's really important. And really useful to be able to know and understand. And then we're also going to be talking about staff efficiency. And spread across these topics, I'm going to be pointing out the areas in the system that you need to have filled in or being used in order to utilize these things. Because sometimes, if you don't have, the data going in, you're not going to have the data coming out the other side. So I'm going to talk about how to make sure that you can take advantage of these things and what you might be missing if you find empty values in your system. I'm launching another poll here. I'm curious, what people are most interested in. So, of course, if people are, most of the crowd is most interested in, financial reporting and understanding workload, then, we won't spend as much time on sales pipeline. So looks like we have about 44% have filled that out, so I appreciate that. I'm going to leave that open for another couple seconds here. Oh, close the poll back. And then we will close that down. Okay, we're at 78% voted in, so thank you for filling out that poll. That's 80%. So it looks like, sales pipeline is of the least interest. And then we have financial reporting and understanding staff efficiency are tied at 38% and 19% to understanding workload. So don't worry, we're still going to, for the 6% that mentioned sales pipeline, we're going to talk about that, and I'll show you, where to look at. So we're not going to ignore it completely, but we'll probably spend a little bit less time on it since it's not as high of interest in that topic. Okay, so as usual, if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask them as we're going through. There is the question box within the GoToWebinar software, so feel free to ask away. Any questions that we can answer today, we will. Anything that we can't, we will follow up with an answer afterwards. I'll be checking in with Sophia periodically just to see if there's any questions that are coming in that should be answered on screen. Oftentimes, she might be answering those in the background if they're simple questions or how-tos and things like that. So your question might be answered immediately from her, or it might be something that will show on screen. So sometimes we get a lot of questions, and then other times we have a bit of a quieter crowd. Please feel free to ask as many questions as you'd like today, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. I'll talk a little bit about some skill development and resources, where to find the product inputs and things like that, as I always do, so that you know where to access these things and gain information and contribute your input. I like to show that off for every webinar. Next session is the 13th of July, 2 weeks from today, same bat time, same bat channel. Oh my goodness, and you know what? I am so sorry. I just realized actually the title of that is incorrect. The next session is not CRM sales management and sales reporting. It is actually the accountant role. So I apologize for that. Looks like I didn't change that title. So it's the next session on the 13th of July is for the accountants. And you'll see that on the webinar registration page. I'll make sure to get that updated to be correct on the next one. As per usual, please like us on Facebook, tweet us on Twitter, pin us on Pinterest, connect with us on LinkedIn, watch our YouTube videos, and then do whatever this thing here tells you to do, RSS feed or something like that. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that we have, for the first time, I've never really done this before, but we have a handout that I wanted to share with you. And you're going to see that when you look at the GoToWebinar control panel, you're going to see a handout. The handout's called Profitability Made Easy ebook. This was something that I co-wrote with a colleague that we had worked with, FunctionPoint had worked with, to produce this ebook. And I thought it was really topical for our session today, for the attendees to be able to take a look at. Specifically, a few formulas that are in here for calculating things like staff cost rates, which I'm going to pull up and talk a little bit about when we get into that financial reporting aspect. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. Now, actually, I am going to go ahead and delete a dashboard that I was creating beforehand because I want to create it live. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so as per usual, if you are wanting to access any information, any help information or anything like that within the FunctionPoint system, you can go up and look at the question mark up at the top. Here you'll have access to the training site. You'll have access to the webinars page. So that's where you can see the future webinars that are coming up and access the recordings of previous webinars. So project and traffic managers hit every deadline, which we did on the 15th of June. The recording is here. And then you'll notice the registration for today's event, and then the registration for the accountant event here, which is happening on the 13th of July, as well as recordings of every webinar series that we've ever done. So that's all available there. And then also there is the option for feature requests. Now, if you select feature requests, it's going to bring you into something we call the AHA portal, and this is where you can submit your feature requests. The login information here is not the same as the login information to FunctionPoint. It is different. If you haven't created a login, then you do need to sign up, but you can go in and submit feature requests and see the responses that have come back for those, and there's actually some voting options as well. It's kind of like Reddit in a way. You can upvote other requests that you like. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at is a custom dashboard that I recommend for owners of the agency. Now you can follow along and create this dashboard as we're going, or you can just kind of jot it down and or review the recording later. But up at the top, you're going to see the little speedometer and the option to customize dashboard. And I'm going to show you some tiles that I recommend choosing and tell you why I recommend choosing them. So I'm going to select the customize dashboards. I'm going to call this owner. And the layout style that I want is I want 2 lateral bars and then 2 squares. That's the tile structure that I want. In the top, I want my utilization summary. And beside that, I want my timesheet summary. And then in the bottom, I want my jobs by company summary, and then I want my task time summary. So again, that's utilization, timesheet summary, jobs by company, and task time summary. Those are the 4 tiles that I recommend. Of course, there's others, but for today's session and this dashboard, those are the ones that I'm going to recommend. You can even take a screenshot of that if you wanted to. We'll close it down in 3, 2, 1. Save and close. And I can then now choose that dashboard. And let me show you what this is producing and why it's important to you. So the first tile that we're seeing is utilization summary. And this is something that's really good to see just generally on a day-to-day basis how we're trending for the month. Now there are filters here, and you can filter this for specific time spans, whether it's a custom date range or one of the predefined ones. And you can choose a specific staff or look at all staff. But this is showing me my target versus my actual and a percentage of the actual compared to the target. So based on the data that I have in the system for the working hours for all of my staff, and based on their target billable efficiencies, I'll show you where to track that a little bit later, this is telling me that so far for the month, we're at an 88% of target on our utilization. So we're very close. We're actually above target at the start of the month, and then we're equal to around the middle, and now we're starting to dip a little bit lower. So we're starting to put in a little bit more non-billable time as the month gets near the end. So this is a really good item to keep track of. You want to see that as close to 100% as you can get it, because remember, it's a percentage of target, not the utilization percentage. It's a percentage of targets. You want that as close to 100% as you can get. We then have the timesheet summary, and this is showing us our total available hours based on our work schedule for all staff, and then how much billable versus non-billable time has been entered. And all of this is interactive, so I can select this to go to the list of the timesheets. This is just, again, a good way to just see it as a snapshot how things are doing for billable efficiency and billable versus non-billable time. We then have a jobs by company summary, and like the others, you can filter this and choose, a custom selection, or choose, just all jobs, which is what I'd recommend for the owner position. And this is showing you each of the, in this case, if you select all jobs, the top 5 clients that you have the most active work for, how many jobs that is, so 10 jobs for Great Atlantic Insurance, and then how many of those are within budget, over 80% of budget, or over budget. And again, interactive, so I can select this to navigate to those jobs, but that just allows me to know, at a glance, really quickly, who are we doing the most work with, how many of those jobs are over budget or approaching budget. My then task time summary is giving me an overview of the task information. So we have job information and then task information. I have 121 open tasks, 39 of them are due in the next 7 days, and 15 of them are late. And then we can see how many of those are over or under budget. And as the owner, I'm logging in, I'm looking at this dashboard, I'm getting a quick snapshot of my time, my jobs, and I look at the tasks and I say, okay, we have 15 late tasks. What is going on with those? What are the tasks? What are they for? I can select this and it will bring me to a list of those tasks. And a little bit later, we're going to talk about how you can customize these lists to get the data that you're looking at in case there's fields or values that you don't want. That's a really useful dashboard that I recommend. Just want to check in, Sophie, before we move on to the sales pipeline stuff, just want to see if there's any questions that we should be answering on screen at this time.
You know what, Mark? We've got a really great group here today, and I think I've been able to answer all of them off to the side, but thanks for checking in.
No problem. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to cover the sales pipeline stuff really quickly because it was the lowest of the interest points. It's pretty straightforward. If you are using Function Point and wanting to use it to track potential work, really the best way to be doing that is through the estimates module. Now, of course, within the CRM system of companies and contacts, I might place appropriate labels on companies so that I'm able to say, show me all of my prospects, perhaps. And I can narrow that down further and use qualification levels and things like that. So they're in track notes and all that type of good stuff. But really, it comes down to the estimates and using the estimate statuses. And this is really crucial if you're going to use a system for this type of functionality. You have to be updating estimate statuses based on what occurs, if something is approved or declined or submitted to the client. What it allows you to do is things like this. As the owner, I want to see what is, currently in the pipeline? What has been submitted to our clients, to our prospects for them to sign off on for potential work that is coming in the future? So I'm going to do an estimate find, and I'm going to use approval status, and I'm going to say, show me everything that has been submitted. It can be as simple as that. Now, I can narrow this down by any other value. Specific clients, I can narrow it down by a certain date range, but it's really valuable to just be able to say, show me everything that's been submitted, and I then have that list. So I have 8 estimates that have been submitted, and from here I can tweak this a little bit. So I can see an estimate date, but I'm not seeing a delivery date. Actually, I see the delivery date there, but maybe I want to resort it. So I can choose to manage those columns and just add and subtract the information that I want. Maybe we'll even include a description there. Move that over beside the name. Move delivery date beside estimate date, and then save that. And there's a variety of other values that we can put in here. We then have our report, and I can produce this into a PDF to see what we have on the go. So we have 8 estimates. It's totaling $125,000 in opportunities here. So really quick and simple report that we can run to understand what's currently submitted and potential work in the pipeline. Now I'm going to skip over, actually, you know what, let's take a look at it really, really quickly. There is another report that's a bit more standardized. We're doing a custom find here, but another report that's really useful is if you go into the report section and under CRM and sales, you're going to find a report here called New Business by Account Executive and Qualification Level. And if you select this, then it allows you to run a report on the same data we were just looking at, just with more information. So I might say, I want to see this for all of my AEs, a bit of a long list, and I want to look at it for only opportunities that are submitted for any company type. I might have submitted opportunities for clients or prospects. So enter my variables. Again, notice that I'm using the approval status of just submitted. Submit that, and I get a report that's showing me a bit more information. So I'm seeing each of the account executives, the opportunity for the account executive, and then I can see, a breakdown of our service value, the total value, if there's a close probability, and an adjusted value based on that probability. So it's a more detailed report. But again, it all boils down to the fact that you need to make sure your team are entering in those opportunities and tracking their approval statuses. So next we're going to be looking at understanding the current agency workload. Before I do, Sophie, I just want to check in. I think I saw 1 or 2 other questions come in. Anything that you think we should address on screen?
You know what? I'm typing out a response right now, so we might as well just tell the entire group. Kate had a really good question just about being able to show the grand totals of that estimate list directly on screen rather than having to produce the PDF. Unfortunately, you will have to produce the PDF to be able grand totals. I believe that is something we've brought up to our product team in the past, though, hoping to see in the future. But as of right now, you will need to go through the PDF.
Yeah, you got it, Sophie. So yeah, you do need to produce that PDF if you want to see the total, but of course there's other reports there you can produce as well and export options too. But you will need to produce that PDF. So the next thing we're going to look at is understanding the current agency workload. I'm going to show a few different ways that you can accomplish that. The first way that I'd recommend doing that is by doing a job find. Now, something that immediately tells me the overall health of a function point system is by doing a job find and selecting find active, putting in no other variables, just find active. That is producing a list of everything that's currently active in the system. And this should be an accurate list of everything that's currently active in the agency. If it is not, if you look at this and hey, there's no way that we have 46 jobs, there's got to be a lot more, there's got to be a lot less, then there's an issue and that should be addressed. And that is handled, of course, by closing jobs as they close and opening them as they need to be opened. But this is going to allow you to immediately see, okay, how many jobs do we have on the go? In this case, we have 46 active jobs currently on the go. Now, there's a few different things that you can do from this list, and we won't spend too much time on the specific managed column items. and we'll probably take a look at that in more detail with regards to the financial reporting. But let's just say, for example, I want to see some other values here. Maybe I want to see more detailed financials, or I want to see hour information. Again, I would choose to manage columns and add and subtract what I need or I don't need. So perhaps I want to add in, estimated and actual hours and move those over here. I'm going to get rid of the edit button, and then I can maybe pop in a description as well, just so I understand a bit more about what's going on. I usually like to put that in there. Save that. And now we're seeing, more information, including the description and the budgeted hours, which is often, a very important indicator of, how things are actually going and how much work you have left for these items. There's also some standardized reports. One that I really like is called Job List by Client. If you select Job List by Clients, this produces a list of all of those jobs in a PDF. It sorts them by client with the total of how many jobs you have for that client, the status, the due dates, the description, the budgeted hours, actual hours, and variance. So we have 2 active jobs for Branson. There's 27 hours left in the budget. We have 1 active job for Burrard Street Golf, our client here, and it's actually over budget by 8.25 hours. We can go through client by client. This is a great Monday morning status report. As we can easily see, Great Atlantic Insurance, our biggest client right now, and we have 8 open jobs for Great Atlantic Insurance. 4 of those jobs are part of a corporate branding campaign. In total, I have 1,092 hours budgeted for that. With 796 entered, we have 295.25 hours left in the budget. So for all of our work for Great Atlantic, there's quite a bit of time left in that budget. Now, being able to do that find active and for it to be accurate is very, very important, but you can also put in things like date ranges. And this is something that you might want to do for both jobs and tasks. So, as the owner of the agency or the creative director, I come in the morning on a Monday, maybe it's the start of the quarter or the start of the month, and I want to see how many jobs do we have going on this month that are due at the end of this month, and then what's our task situation like as well. So I'm going to come into the job find, and I want to see how many jobs are due. Find our due date here. There it is. So how many jobs are due between today and July 31st? So I want to know how many jobs that are currently active are being worked on between that time span. I'm going to select Find Active, and then that narrows down my search. So of my 44 active jobs, 17 of them are due within the month of July. So I have 17 active jobs currently on the go that are due by the end of the month. And I can then, of course, look at the budget information that I was looking at a minute ago. And I want to do something very similar for tasks. And that's actually a really good habit to get into. The task find is very useful, and it's good for that kind of Monday morning where do things stand report. So there might be 2 things that I want to do. The first thing I want to do is take a look at what's overdue. What's been assigned that's supposed to have been done by this point, but is not done by this point. Now, I can access that from the dashboard because we set up a tile to show it, but I could also do a task find, and I could say, show me everything that is due before today, so less than today, earlier than June 29th, and I want to see everything that is assigned or in progress. So everything due before today that's assigned or in progress. Find tasks, and I can see that I have 14 active tasks that are assigned or in progress that are due before today. Now, when I look at this list, I'm not seeing exactly what they're for. I can see the job name, but I don't know the description. So I'm going to choose, again, to manage my columns. I'm going to add the task description. Also, there's the 2 initials, which I don't really like, so I'm going to add 2 name. Well, I already have too much in there, so we'll get rid of some of the other stuff that we don't need. We don't need maybe the job number or the priority or the assigned by, but we want status. Get rid of this here, put in the company name actually. Sort this in the way we want it. So we have the job, the company name, the job name, the task description. I'm going to take out the 2 initials. We have then the 2 name, and then status, estimated actual hours, percentage complete we'll take out as well. Maybe we don't really want to see that right now. And then due time, I'm not as interested in as well. So we'll take out due time, and then we'll take out service. So I've made quite a bit of changes to this, but this is going to give me a much more digestible report. So I can see we have 14 active tasks due before today. I want to see the client they're for, the job they're for, what the task is, what's supposed to be done, who's supposed to be doing it, what's the status, how much time do they have to complete it, how much time have they put in, and how much time is remaining. As well, how overdue is it? I now have this much more digestible report. I'm going to sort this by the to name, and I'm going to sub-sort it by the company name, and I'm going to produce a PDF that I can then bring to my meeting and go through one by one. And these are our, hey team, these are our list of open tasks. Brock, we're going to start off with you. You have 1, 2, 3 tasks that are on the go. I have 1, 2, 3 tasks as well, and we're going through this list and talking to each of our staff people and asking, hey Roger, the mech art production for the new travel kit for Great Atlantic Insurance, that was due on the 24th of June. There's 4 hours left in the budget. It says you're in progress. Please maybe update the description and let us know how you're doing with that. And that's getting into a bit more detail. I'm getting into kind of the project manager realm, but this, if your team is accurately tracking their task data, it allows you to really quickly understand exactly what's going on, what's overdue, and what still needs to be done, things like that. Sophie, I can see that you're typing away there. Anything that you think that we should address?
Actually, lots of questions are coming in right now, and I haven't had a chance to read all of them yet to let you know. Just at a glance, though, it does look like someone's just saying you're talking a little fast, if you don't mind slowing down a little bit. Thanks, Mark.
That's always a problem that I have for sure. It's trying to slow myself down. I'm a talker and I'm a fast talker as well, so I apologize for that. I'll try to slow it down a little bit. So we're going to take, I'll check back in with Sophie in just a minute. We're going to take a look at a little bit more around the workload stuff. So again, you'll see a bit of a theme in the last 5 minutes or so, and that is around these these searches requiring good data. So if you're doing a job find and you're searching based on due dates, or if you're doing a task find based on due dates and based on statuses, of course, if you don't have accurate data in the system that represents what is actually going on, then you can't produce this information and you can't see it quickly and easily. So it requires the team to be really on top of their list of items that they're working on and making sure that they're marking them completed as appropriate. So those custom searches are really useful. I do, however, want to show 2 other areas. One is the tasks and to-dos page. You can actually include this on one of your dashboards, but what this allows us to do is interact with the list. So I could say, show me everything that is currently assigned to my design team, and I'm just holding my command key and clicking multiple individuals. Everything assigned to my design team. So this is a list of all the tasks that are assigned to my design team. And I got here by going, again, to my tasks and to-dos. So everything assigned to my design team. Now I want to see everything that is, let's say, due in the next 7 days. So these are all the tasks assigned to my design team due in the next 7 days. Now I know that the client that I have the most work on from the other reports I looked at is Great Atlantic Insurance. There's a lot of outstanding time for Great Atlantic Insurance. So I'm going to narrow this down by Great Atlantic. So I'm typing in the client name or the job name or description or whatever it might be, and it's narrowing it down. See here I have Great Atlantic Insurance. There are 4 tasks on the go related to that client due in the next 7 days, assigned to my design team. They've all been assigned by myself. So I have, one to Jimmy, one to Thomas, another one to Amanda. I can see when they're due, the budgeted actual hours, the variance on that, and then the jobs that they're for. So of course I can navigate into that and see how that job is doing. So you can really quickly dynamically work with this and adjust those filters and those statuses and quickly get an understanding of what's going on. And I also recommend taking a look at the resource link. I'm going to talk a little bit about this and what this is supposed to be and represent. As the owner of the agency or the creative director, this is actually a really good area to get a quick understanding of the load balance and the workload that you have amongst the team. Now it requires tasks to be going in with budgeted hours in order for the system to know how to plot the time. It also requires tasks going in with a start date and an end date so the system knows again where to plot the time. This is not necessarily the best area for coming in and looking to see if list of what each individual has on their plate, although you are able to select this information and it will show you the tasks that are making up that time. I usually recommend, so you can see the data, but it's not really a place you're coming to see specifically what they're working on. It's more so an area you're coming to see how loaded or underloaded they are. So if people are completing their tasks and tracking their time and new tasks are being added, this will evolve dynamically. You'll be able to quickly understand, okay, Brittany's very evenly loaded, Amanda's a little bit light right now, so she can take on some new work. If we scroll down, Roger here is pretty overbooked. So I might want to know, hey, what's Roger working on? Of course, I can select this from here, but instead I might do something else. I might move this off to the side or off to a different monitor if I happen to have one, and then do a task find, or maybe even from the screen say, you know what, just show me everything for Roger. Let's find him in our list here. Oh, he's around somewhere. People are probably watching me go over his name like 3 times as I don't see it. There it is. So we'll select Roger. Yeah, so I have the 10 tasks that are on the go for Roger, sorted by due dates, and I can get a bit of an understanding of them. So here's one that's due on the 13th of July for 50 hours that he hasn't started yet. So that's a big one. That's probably taking up a lot of his time, or will in the future. So a useful item just to get a general high-level understanding of what your overall load balance. You want to see a lot of green. The more green, the better. Gray is unallocated time, and then if you see a lot of red, it means that you're overbooking your team, or your project managers are. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change paces here. We're going to be looking at the financial reporting aspect of things. Sophie, I see you're still kind of typing away there. What are your thoughts here? Anything that you think that we should be addressing at this time?
No, I think I'm doing okay right now. Thanks for checking in, though.
No problem. Thanks for answering all those questions. Okay, so we're going to be taking a look at some financial reporting, and I'm going to focus a lot of this time on one specific report that I always recommend people look at and go to, because it's very detailed, it has a lot of data in it, and it also is going to allow me to point out specific things that you might be missing and how to rectify that. So the first thing I want to do, well, let's take a look at that report. So if you're looking at a financial report, whether it's for one client or multiple clients, for everything that's ever happened or just within a date span, the first area that I recommend that you look is in the report section under Analyze. There's a report here called Profit Analysis. I highly recommend this be your first place that you go when you're wanting to review a financial report. So I'm going to select Profit Analysis, and that's going to give me some options, some filters, some variables that I can run this report by. One of those options is a date range. Now, the longer you use function point, the more important this range is. If you don't limit it by a date range, you're going to get everything, and that could be a very large report. So I'm going to look at this for, I'm going to say from the 1st of May until today. So this will only show jobs with timesheets or expenses or invoices, actually, as well, so say that, within this date range. I'm then going to leave the statuses to everything and submit it. So this is showing me all of the jobs that we have done any work on in that time span. So any jobs that did not have any work done in that time span, we would then not be seeing here. I'm going to go through the values that we're seeing, and I'm going to talk about what they represent in terms of why you should be looking at them on a regular basis and why they should be important to you. And notice how we have, the client and each job for the client and then totals by the client. So you have all that information there. So I'm just going to scroll across and we'll take a look at these values. So first we have our estimated internal cost. Now this is referring to the estimated cost values, not the billable values, but the cost values of your time and expenses. So you need to have a cost rate in the system for time in order for that to fill in, because it's an estimated cost. And then the estimated cost of external expenses. So usually not something that's looked at as often as the others. We then have actual cost to date. Now this is very important, and I'm going to show you if you have blanks in your system, I'm going to show you why that would be. So actual cost to date is referring to the cost value of your time and the cost value, the pre-markup value of your external expenses. Now, the cost value of your time is coming from the cost rates that are associated with the staff people. Every staff person in the system has a minimum of 2 values associated with every timesheet, a cost value and then a billable value. That billable value could be the agency blended rate, it could be their specific rate, it could be the service rate or the role rate, whatever it might be, however you manage your billing rates, but the cost rate is always stagnant. And where that cost rate is coming from is in the admin section under rate and staff management. When you go into your staff list, blank that out there. So this is your full list of staff. From your admin staff list, if you select any individual, you'll then be able to see their hourly cost. All the information in our system is just example, it's not real, but this is the cost to your company. Now, speaking with an agency yesterday, and the way that they calculate their costs is they take their, the staff person's salary and they divide it by the number of hours worked in a year. That's totally fine. The way that we recommend doing it is by taking the agency overhead and dividing it amongst your staff, and then adding in their salary and coming up with a cost value there. There is detailed instructions on how to do this within your Profitability Made Easy ebook that is in the handout that is provided within the GoToWebinar panel. So it gives an example of staff cost rates. It gives you, this is, information, all this data is pulled from survey information of real agencies. So it's not fake information. Well, it's not a real agency, but it's an accumulation of all of the averages across all the agencies that conducted the surveys. This is showing us, how to calculate that cost rate. Taking the overhead, dividing it amongst the billable staff, adding the salary of the individual, getting a net adjusted amount, dividing it by the number of hours worked in a week, so after vacation, holidays, and sick time, and then getting the hourly cost of that individual. And every timesheet they put in will have that cost applied to it, whether that timesheet is billable or not billable. So if you run a profit analysis report and this column is blank, but your team tracks time, it's because you don't have cost rates in your system. Then what we're seeing is the estimated billable value and the actual billable value. Now, these two amounts are often used to calculate and look at work in progress. And this is very important as the owner or creative director of an agency. This is a very common question I get asked is, how can I see work in progress? Now, traditionally, work in progress is defined by the value of the work that you have done minus what you have already invoiced. So, if we've done $100,000 worth of work and we've invoiced $50,000 for those jobs, and our work in progress is $50,000. But more and more, the agencies I speak with do not calculate work in progress this way. Most agencies I speak with are working in a fixed price environment. So they come up with a fixed price that they charge for a deliverable or a project or some sort of event or whatever it may be, and they stick to that fixed price. If the fixed price is, just use $100,000, it's a high number, but just to make the math easy, if the fixed price is $100,000 and, they have, $75,000 worth of work, by the end of it, they're going to bill $100,000. If they have $125,000 worth of work, they're going to bill $100,000. It doesn't matter, it's a fixed price. That is the most common structure I'm seeing. In that scenario, if you have gone over budget, then your actual billable value compared to your invoice no longer equals work in progress. If you have, $125,000 worth of time against a job, and the fixed price was $100,000, but you've only invoiced $75,000, then that fixed price, then your work in progress is $25,000. Because for a lot of agencies I speak with, the work in progress is the difference between what they have estimated as the billable value and what they have invoiced. Your estimated becomes your fixed price. It is what you intend to charge for all of your work, for most agencies I speak with. So you're wanting to compare that to the invoiced amount. So a way that I often describe it for these types of agencies that I speak with is work in progress is defined as the difference between the value of the work that has been done compared to what has been invoiced, up until the value of the work equals the estimated amount, because at that point, the fixed price comes into play. And we can see those comparisons right in this report. So we're seeing our invoice value, and we can then see our invoice versus estimated and our invoice versus actual. So these are those two values that I'm talking about, your invoice versus your estimated, invoice versus your fixed price, and your invoice versus your actual work. This is really insightful information for an agency owner to see, especially someone who hasn't been using a system like this and hasn't had quick and easy access to this information. An agency that I spoke with or did some work with about a year or two ago now, they had no idea that their billable value of their work was significantly higher than what they were invoicing, because they're always invoicing to a fixed price and they're always going over budget. It's really important information to see. Now, this data is calculated exactly as it is displaying it to you. So invoice versus estimated means invoice minus estimated. So if I take my invoice amount and I minus my estimated amount, so again, invoice to date total is $429,000 for all the jobs in that date range. My estimated billable is $836,000. So the difference between that is the amount. So, $429,000 minus 800-something thousand gives us negative $406,000. This is the amount that is unbilled of our fixed price. So as you go through this report and you read these column headers, they represent, they are calculated as they are described, invoice versus estimated, invoice versus actual. These are very, very important columns. I know I'm spending a lot of time on it, but it's a very important area for an agency owner to come and look at on a regular basis. We then have profit information. So estimated profit, is basically just based on the estimate. What's the estimated value of our costs and the estimated value of our billable work. Potential profit is assuming if you billed for every single penny of billable work you have in the system, then it takes that into account and subtracts the cost amounts to give you your potential profit. And then your actual profit is, of course, your invoiced amount minus your cost amount of time and expenses. So, we're profitable by $280,000 in that time span, so that's pretty good. But we have $66,000 of uninvoiced work based on our actuals. But right now we have $406,000 compared to our fixed price. I was recently working with an engineering firm, and they were running this report, and they wouldn't believe that the invoice versus estimated value was correct. They just couldn't believe it because it showed that they had like $150,000 worth of unbilled work in their fixed price for the month. And it just seemed way too, it was a very small company, it just seemed way too high for them. And when we went through it and proved that it actually was correct, they seemed to be quite pleased about that. So very valuable report. I highly recommend this being your first stop for anything financial related for clients or jobs as a whole. So if you have anything that we should check in or discuss related to this report or anything else?
You know what would actually be really great to point out? I've had a few people just make a comment on the fact that they're having trouble opening up some of our XML reports. This is a browser issue, and we are able to reset that so that you can open everything correctly. I've just had a few people send that through, and so I'm not ignoring your question. I just have a little bit of direction to send through to you.
Yeah, I can actually touch on that really quickly. In order to do so, I'm going to have to show my really messy desktop, which I'm really not looking forward to doing because I hide it with agendas and with the system and with reports. But I'm going to show this to you, and I am not proud of it. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to save this report. It's going to save as an XML, and I'm going to save it to my desktop. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to find a way to not have to show this. You know what? Let's just do that. I'm going to save it to my desktop. Sorry about that. Desktop. Where am I going here? Let's just see if I can save it to downloads and see if that works. Oh, that's opening up. say I'm spending a bit too much time on this. We might come back, might just do this later via email, but let's see here. Okay, everyone prepare yourself for extremely messy desktop. So let's see here if I can find that report. Yeah, it's or any XML report really. Okay, so what you want to do if you're having trouble opening up those XML reports in the system, if you're on a Mac, what you want to do is save the file somewhere, find the file, right-click, and go to Get Info. Once you've opened up Get Info, you can then see Open With, and you can want to change that to the appropriate files. You want to change that in this case to Excel and then select Change All. And it's a computer setting. Basically, you just need to tell the system files downloaded from this program that are XML, open in Excel every time, and then it'll work out for you. So that's how you resolve that issue. And if you haven't looked at this report yet, if you're having that issue, then clearly you haven't looked at this report, and that's something that you're going to want to do right away. So I highly recommend doing that. Okay, so that's the profit analysis report. Now there's two other financial things I want to show really quickly, and then we're going to take a look at the understanding staff utilization. So your go-to financial report is the profit analysis report, but if there's two other things I'd want to recommend. One is in the report section, also under Analyze, directly below profit analysis, is a report called Estimate, Actual, and Invoice, dollars by company, project, and job. I call it the EAI report. This is a very similar report to what we're looking at. I also recommend putting a date range on this. And then we'll just say just for open jobs, submit that. There it is. This one can actually take, depending on the date range you put in, it might take like 10 seconds to download. So just a heads up in case you're wondering if it's actually working. It's just working away to download it. So this is giving you really similar information as the profit analysis with just some additional details. So it's showing things like for example, the work type, the account executive, aging, PO client PO number, description. There's also hour information. So not only financials, but I can see estimated and actual hours. And then we have very similar financial values, but it's just showing us additional information. So I know a lot of people look at this report instead because they want to be able to see, okay, well, what's our total estimate versus invoice and what's our total actual versus invoice, but then also how are we doing in our estimated and actual hours. So this is another report I highly recommend taking a look at. And then lastly, on the financial side, the custom searches are really useful as well. And I'm going to give you an example of this. Let's say that we want to produce a report. And as the owner of the agency, I want to understand what have we purchased in expenses for our active work, and then what have we actually invoiced our clients for, and what is our the total value. I want to get an understanding of expense costs, expenses versus invoice amounts. And this is just one example. But I would do a job find for these types of things because you're not going to find a standardized report that's going to give you exactly what you're looking for. It's very valuable to be able to do a job find, select find active, or whatever parameters you want to put in. And if you select manage columns, you're going to find a variety of advanced options. So up at the top left, you'll see advanced. I'm going to take off some of these other items here that I don't need. Let's get rid of that and that. And then I'm going to go into my advanced. And I'm going to add in estimated external expense, actual external expense dollars, so AKA post markup, and then invoice external expense. Let's actually put in cost as well. I'm going to sort those the way that I want. So I want estimated external expense. I then want actual dollars and then invoiced. Now, if you put in too much in here, it can start to cut things off. So I'm actually going to take off some of these other amounts. We'll leave total invoiced amount. So check out this really great report that I can now run. So what this is showing me is for all of my active jobs, what did we estimate the external expense value would be? Have we purchased any external expenses? What was the cost value and what was the markup value? Have we invoiced those external expenses? And have we invoiced anything in addition to those external expenses? So there's a couple examples, but let's sort this by actual external expense cost. So here are the jobs where we have external expenses that have values. So we have, in this case, let's look at this one. We have $1,200 estimated external expense, actual external expense costs. We estimated $4,500, so there's still more to be purchased. We have in post markup $1,399 above our $1,200. We've invoiced for our $1,399, and in total for the job we've invoiced $3,049. So this, it's a pretty specific example, but it shows you how if you need to see something in a way that another reporter is not giving to you, in this case, external expense data, you can find that information in the Manage Columns option, and you can then export this data to a CSV or Excel. You can create pivot tables with it, or run a graph, or whatever else you want to do in Excel, you can. Very, very useful information to be able to customize these columns, sort them as you need, and then generate reports on that custom data. And this is one I show all the time, because a really common question I get is, especially from that owner or creative director's perspective, I want to know, for all of our active work, how many expenses do we have out there purchased right now? And I thought I had a bit more on this list. It's pretty slim. But how many expenses do I have out there purchased right now? And have we invoiced for them? And, if not, what's the value of the invoice of the expenses that have been invoiced? So that's a really valuable report there, something I show off quite often. It's a very common question. So the next thing that we're going to jump into is the utilization aspect, and understanding staff efficiency, of where that data comes from, and there are a few of the reports that you want to look at to understand staff efficiency. And I'm also going to talk about some staff, I almost want to refer to it as like billability, because it's different than efficiency. I'm going to talk about what these terms mean and the reports so you can run to understand them. Before I do, Sophie, looks like I think we're all caught up on those, but anything that you think we should address?
Hey, thanks for checking in. You know what? There's lots of really good questions, but they're all very specific to the agencies. I think we're going to be having a few calls sort of outside of this webinar with a few people.
Sounds good, no problem. Yeah, keep on, feel free to continue asking those questions, everyone, and we will make sure to assist you with those. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the concept of staff efficiency and staff billability. I'm kind of making that word up, and how you can see this information in the system. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that two areas are filled in. One, the system's work calendar. So the work calendar shows how many hours people are set to work in a week. So we can look at this for the company, 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. I usually go in and I set that and I carry it to all office staff, but you can also look at each individual staff person. So, each individual staff person, and set their specific hours if you want. But having those staff hours then sets a target for how many hours they're supposed to work. So again, that's the work calendar. Very important that you go in and set that work calendar up. The next is setting billable efficiency targets. Now, even if this isn't information you look at often, it's a really good idea to go in and have a billable hours target for each individual. Now, a while back, 80% billable target was common for a billable staff person. 72% is more taken as the norm recently when you really account for everything and you look at it realistically. So it's up to you, but you want to look at 72% is a good target for like a designer who's tracking all of their time. So if they're only tracking the billable work and they don't track the non-billable stuff, none of this makes sense anyways. So if they track every hour that they're in the office, then 72% is a good target for a designer. Then you're looking at more like probably 40% for an account executive, or maybe even substantially lower. You might be looking at about 30, 40% for a project manager. A creative director could be anywhere from 10% to 90%, depending on the type of creative director and the type of agency. And then an owner is usually anywhere from 0 to 10 or 20%, again, depending on the size of the agency and the situation. But you want to have those values filled in for each person. What that allows you to do is run a few different reports. So if you go into the reports section and you go into Analyze, there is Actually, no, let's come back to this one. Sorry, I want to show a different one. If you go into reports and you go into time, there's a report here called efficiency. Now, this is really nice. Run a date range here, we'll say for this month. Because it shows you every single staff person, the total hours that they worked, the amount that was non-billable, the amount that was billable, their billable efficiency percentage, the billable value of the work, the cost value, and the variance. Now, of course, you might not bill for every billable hour they put in, but it shows you what the billable value of the work was. So really clean report, really easy way for you to go down the list and spot cases where people aren't putting in their time. Now, in my demo system, everyone has all their time in. It's all very, very clean. But you might go through this list and find, 157, 157, 134, 0, because Olivia didn't put in her time or something like that. So it's a good way to spot that and to see, where are people falling off on their billable efficiency. Now, I'm going to show a utilization report as well. The one thing I want to talk about is the concept of the billable value of the work compared to the billed value of the work, their billability. Someone might put in, $20,000 worth of billable time in a time period. They have the highest billable percentage of anyone. But do we actually bill for all their work? Do we actually bill for the full value of the work? And what's actually the billed value of the work that they put in? Because that is something that can fluctuate significantly from the billable efficiency. And the way that you can see that, and this is another report that I really like, that I really recommend looking at, is under Analyze. It's called Billable Hours Recovered by Staff. You can also look at it by client, look at it by staff. Billable hours recovered by staff. What this allows us to see is what is the time that they put in within that date range. So we can see, the individual, the jobs they worked on, and the total hours that they worked. We can then see the billable value of the work that they put in, but we can also then see the invoiced value. Now, I selected the month of June, so a lot of this time it hasn't been billed yet, so you probably want to look at it a bit more historically. But this report allows you to understand the difference between what the billable value was and what the billed value was. And that variance tells you what the difference between those amounts are. Because you might be looking at a staff person and seeing, huge billable values, but if you're not, if it's all because they keep on going over budget on all their design work and you never actually bill for that time, or you bill that time for a significantly discounted value, then they're not actually bringing in as much money as some of the other reports might indicate. So that is this is a very, very useful report. You usually want to look at it a month or two behind so that all the invoicing is caught up. But I highly recommend looking at that. And then the last report I want to show here is under Plan, and it's called Staff Utilization. So again, Staff Utilization, let's put this in for the month of June as well. Oops, June 1 until today. Now, this report, as well as the graph on the dashboard, takes into account the targets, which is really, really useful. What this shows us is, each individual, their target billable percentage, the total available hours, this comes from the work calendar that I pointed out earlier, their target hours. So we remember that Alon had a target of 72%, so 72% of 168 is 120.96 hours. They ended up working 160 hours, and the total billable was 135. So they're actually over on that. Now here we have some values that I usually tell people to ignore. It's the concept of external billable versus internal non-billable. For example, you might do a billable job for your own company. That would be an internal billable job. You could collapse these if you wanted to, and this is a bit more advanced. But over here lies the kind of the more simple stuff where it's showing you what was their total billable. So, Alon here had a target of 72%. He came in at 84%. So I might look at that and say, okay, well, that's great. He's doing really well. Now let's run that billable hours recovered by staff and look and see how much of that 135 hours was actually billed and what was the value that was actually billed for. So you can really dissect this stuff. You can get really detailed and deep into this time data and understand, how each of your teams are doing with regards to billable efficiency and actual billed hours. And this is just as relevant for any agency that is on a fixed price type of model, just as relevant to them as it is to a time and materials agency. In fact, I would argue even more so, because if you're a fixed price agency, I speak with a lot of fixed price agencies that either don't track time and are just getting started, or they track time but they never look at this information. I've heard really hilarious comments and meetings around agencies that charge everything on a fixed price and just have never even thought to look at what is the billed value of all the work that they actually put in to getting these jobs done. So really interesting stuff. I highly recommend, as the owner of an agency, you want to be very on top of these numbers. They're great, leading indicators of your agency's financial performance out into the future. So take a look at those often. So we have come to the end of our time. Sophie, what's going on over there? Do you think is there anything that we should touch on? Anything I missed, or comments you want to make, or questions I should answer?
Yeah, I've got actually a couple of really good questions. First of all, Mark was just another Mark to this Mark. He was just wondering if you could quickly show where that report, that utilization report you were just showing, lives.
Yeah, for sure. Let's take a look. Sorry, it's always it's when you're watching a webinar, you can go to sip your coffee and you look up and it's like, how did he get there? So the area that I pulled that utilization report, the one we were just looking at, was under reports and plan. So the plan tab, and you have staff utilization. So under plan, you have staff utilization. Under time, you have efficiency. And under analyze, you have billable hours recovered. So those are the three that we just looked at, but the utilization was under plan.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. And then I had another question from James, and I might be misunderstanding it, but maybe you can help me with this, Mark. He's wondering, for full-time employees, is there a way that they can track the billable utility without requiring them to track non-billable time?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you don't track any non-billable time, then you'll never, the billable efficiency value will never mean anything to you, because the billable efficiency value will always be 100%. That being said, what you could do is you could put their target hours at, like 8 hours a day or 9 hours or 7.5, whatever it is for yourselves. So put their target hours as the full amount. So if they have, a target hours of, 8 hours in a day, and they track, 4 billable hours in the entire day, well, their billable efficiency for that day is 50%. Now, there's not going to be, actually, I was going to say there's not going to be a report that will show that to you, but there is. If I look at the staff utilization report that we were just looking at, then you will see a comparison between June 1st to today. You will see a comparison between the available hours and the hours worked. So, this would be the difference between these two, would be the efficiency. That being said, if you're tracking time in the system, it is so easy to track your non-billable time. Like, get some catch-all job, some in-house job with a service called, in-house or non-billable, and ask everyone, if you're not tracking time to something billable, put it into the non-billable service, get your 8 hours in a day. I would understand, if you're not tracking time at all, I totally get that. If you are tracking time, it's so easy to fill in the blanks with some sort of catch-all. You don't need to be tracking every 15-minute meeting. That's not what I'm suggesting, but just get some singular service, some catch-all you can put all your non-billable time to.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. I think everything else, again, they're all kind of questions that I think I'm going to have to handle offline, but everyone keep sending them through, and we'll make sure we set up a time to connect with everyone.
Great. Well, I really appreciate everyone's time today. As per usual, any suggestions you have for the webinars, please email them to success@functionpoint.com. Again, that's success@functionpoint.com. 2 weeks from today, same bad time, same bad channel, we're going to be going over a session for accountants and AEs. And really what it is an invoicing session, but there's also other aspects. So, expenses, of course, are an important aspect of that. We'll be talking a bit